You wake with nothing in your stomach. Not the pleasant emptiness before breakfast. A deep, sour pull sits beneath your ribs, and every smell from the dying fire makes your mouth fill with saliva. There may be no food today. For most of human prehistory, hunger was not a countdown to the next meal. It was uncertainty, a missed hunt, a dry season that lasted too long, or one injured gatherer could turn an ordinary day into a question your entire body had to answer. How long could you keep moving before weakness began making decisions for you? At first, hunger sharpened you. Your stomach tightened. Your attention shifted toward tracks, bird calls, fallen fruit, disturbed soil, and every sign that calories might be hidden nearby. Your brain treated food as the most important object in the landscape. Then time passed. Stored sugar in your liver began to fall. Your body released fat for fuel. You could still walk, dig, climb, and think, but every task now carried a price that had to be paid from your own tissues. This was not yet starvation. It was the edge of it. Modern people often imagine prehistory as an endless famine, with thin humans wandering desperately between rare animal kills. The evidence tells a more complicated story. Hunger was real, sometimes brutal, but it was not constant everywhere. And it was rarely faced by one person alone. Anthropologist Richard B. Lee discovered this while studying Jew-Honsky foragers in the Kalahari during the 1960s. Lee expected a daily struggle for scraps. Instead, his field measurements showed a diet built from a wide range of roots, berries, melons, gums, meat, and especially mongongo nuts. Food gathering could be highly productive, even in a dry environment. That does not mean prehistoric life was easy. It means hunger depended on place, season, knowledge, mobility, and other people. Could a person surrounded by edible plants still starve? Yes. The problem was not simply whether food existed. The problem was whether you knew where it was, whether it was ripe, whether it was poisonous, whether you had enough water to reach it, and whether your body still had the strength to carry it home. A landscape that looked empty to an outsider could hold hundreds of meals. A familiar landscape could also become dangerous when the usual signals failed. Rain might arrive late, herds might shift their route, a grove might produce fewer nuts, a river might shrink into muddy pools. Food was not a supermarket shelf waiting in the same place every morning. Your survival depended on a mental map that changed with the year. That map included what anthropologists call fallback foods. These were foods eaten when preferred foods became scarce: tougher roots, bitter seeds, small animals, shellfish, insects, bone grease, or plants requiring hours of pounding, soaking, roasting, or scraping. Fallback did not mean worthless. It meant expensive. A large animal could feed many people, but hunting it might consume a full day and return nothing. A patch of tubers was less dramatic, yet more predictable. Your ancestors survived by balancing high rewards against reliable ones. What would hunger feel like after several failed days? Your movements would slow. Cold would reach deeper because your body had less fuel to produce heat. Irritability would rise. Sleep could become restless. Children might cry less, not because they felt better, but because conserving energy became more important than demanding attention. Adults would begin making harder choices. Who walked farthest? Who stayed with the youngest child? Who received the fattiest portion? Who was strong enough to hunt? And who needed food precisely because weakness had made hunting impossible? This is where the popular image of the lone prehistoric survivor falls apart. Food sharing was not a sentimental extra. It was survival technology. Research led by Abigail Page on hunter-gatherer social networks described sharing as a form of insurance against unpredictable returns. A household could fail on a particular day while another succeeded. By moving food through the group, a personal failure did not have to become a personal famine. Among Ache foragers in Paraguay, data discussed in this research showed how dramatic that protection could be. Without sharing, an average household would have fallen below 1,000 calories per person on many more days. With sharing, severe daily shortages became far less common. One hunter's success covered another hunter's failure. And tomorrow the direction could reverse. Your most important food container may have been another person's memory of what you had shared before. That changes the meaning of hunger. You could be hungry while food was being searched for. You could feel your stomach contract through an empty morning and still trust that someone might return carrying roots, honey, meat, nuts, eggs, or shellfish before dark. But trust had limits. A local disaster could be shared away. A regional disaster could not. when drought struck every water source, when winter locked the ground, or when game disappeared across an entire territory. The whole network faced the same empty landscape. At that point, mobility became the next defense. Your camp was not necessarily a permanent home. It was a temporary answer to a moving problem. As nearby foods were collected, walking distances grew. Lee recorded this pattern among the Jew, Honski. The longer a camp remained in one place, the farther people had to travel to find preferred foods. Moving camp brought bodies closer to the next patch of calories. Prehistoric hunger was therefore measured in distance as much as emptiness. A meal 10 kilometers away existed. A meal 10 kilometers away from a sick child, an injured adult, or an exhausted group might as well not exist at all. Archaeology preserves fragments of these decisions. At Kesem Cave in present-day Israel, researchers including Ruth Blasko, Jordi Rosal, Avi Gopher, and Ran Barkai studied animal bones dating from roughly 400,000 to 200,000 years ago. Marks on certain long bones, combined with experiments on how marrow survived inside them, suggested that people sometimes stored limb bones and cracked them later. The bone itself became a container. Inside was marrow, dense with fat and energy. That delayed meal mattered because lean meat alone could not solve every hunger problem. Your body needs fat or carbohydrate for much of its energy. An animal at the end of winter might carry less fat, making a successful hunt less nourishing than it appeared. So the most valuable part of a carcass was not always the largest muscle. It could be the grease hidden in joints, the marrow sealed inside bone, the brain inside the skull, or the fat wrapped around organs. Would your ancestors waste the final scraps? Not when hunger was close. Bones could be smashed into smaller pieces. Marrow could be scraped out. Grease could sometimes be extracted through prolonged heating. Every extra calorie reduced the amount of your own body that had to be consumed before the next success. Teeth preserve another part of the story. During childhood, enamel forms in layers and does not repair itself later. Severe physiological stress can interrupt that growth, leaving pits or grooves known as enamel hypoplasia. The marks do not identify one exact cause, but illness and inadequate nutrition are among the stresses that can produce them. A 2024 study led by Laura Sophia Limmer compared enamel disruptions in Neanderthals and Upper Paleolithic modern humans. Both groups showed evidence of stressful childhood periods. Neanderthal children, however, showed an increasing likelihood of growth disruption around and after weaning, while the pattern among the early modern human sample dropped after weaning was expected to finish. The teeth do not say, "This child went hungry on this day." They say the body was forced to interrupt growth. That distinction matters because prehistoric hunger often arrived beside infection, cold, injury, and exhaustion. A child with fewer calories also had fewer resources for fighting disease. An adult weakened by illness could gather less food, creating a loop in which hunger caused weakness and weakness deepened hunger. Some of the oldest evidence for seasonal dietary strain reaches even farther back. In 2019, Renaud Joannes Boyou and colleagues analyzed chemical changes locked inside the teeth of Australopithecus africanus, an earlier human relative living more than 2 million years ago. Their results suggested repeated cycles of dietary change and stress, likely tied to seasonal shifts in available food. Seasonality was older than your species. So was the need to endure it. But here comes the counterintuitive twist. Hunter-gatherers were not necessarily the people most frequently destroyed by famine. Jennifer Burbesque, Frank Marlowe, Peter Shaw, and Paul Thompson compared reports across societies and found that hunter-gatherers experienced less frequent famine than agriculturalists on several measures. Farming could produce enormous stores, but it also tied communities to a smaller number of crops, fixed fields, dense settlements, and harvests that could fail all at once. A field of grain looked like security. It could also become a trap. A mobile forager could respond to scarcity by changing location, changing prey, changing plants, or calling on distant social ties. A farmer who lost the main harvest could face months before the next one. While hundreds of neighbors suffered the same shortage, prehistoric hunger therefore had no single shape. In one place, it was an empty afternoon after an unsuccessful hunt. In another, it was the lean end of the dry season. In another, it was a freezing month when plants disappeared and animals carried little fat. Sometimes hunger was routine and temporary. Sometimes it carved permanent lines into teeth. Now reconstruct one day. You wake before sunrise under a hide or grass covering. The fire is low, Yesterday's digging produced only a few fibrous roots, and the hunters returned after dark with nothing. Your stomach is already tight. An older relative remembers a stand of trees beyond the ridge. The best nuts near camp are gone, but a farther patch may still hold food. Reaching it means hours of walking before the heat rises. You leave with a digging stick, a carrying skin, and 2 other people. Along the way, every choice is an energy calculation. Chasing a small animal may cost more than it returns. Climbing for a bird's nest may risk injury. Digging in hard soil may produce a root large enough to feed several people. Or nothing but sweat. By midday, your mouth is dry. Then one person notices cracked soil beside a plant whose leaves have already died back. The stem looks useless. The underground storage root is not. You dig. The earth resists. Your shoulders burn. Hunger makes the work feel heavier. Yet the root slowly appears, pale and thick beneath the dirt. It is not a feast. It is enough. Back at camp, the food is divided. A child receives a soft portion. An injured adult receives some. The people who found it eat too. But ownership is blurred because survival works better that way. Night arrives with hunger still present. Yet the feeling has changed. Your stomach is not full. But tomorrow remains possible. That may be the deepest difference between ancient hunger and modern appetite. Today, a missed meal can feel like an emergency even when food is minutes away. Your body still uses alarms shaped in a world where delay could become danger. The smell of hot food captures your attention. A nearly empty cupboard feels more threatening than its actual calorie count. Stress can make sweetness and fat seem unusually powerful because your brain still treats dense energy as opportunity. Your ancestors did not survive because hunger never reached them. They survived because knowledge widened the menu. Movement widened the map, storage widened the season, and sharing widened the number of people one meal could protect. You wake with nothing in your stomach. But in prehistory, the most important question was never only whether you were hungry. It was whether anyone beside you would eat before nightfall.